Meeple. He might be one of the most complicated brawlers I've seen because he seems pretty bad. But for casuals, he'll be annoying because his basic attack is guided and it deals way too much damage. But then at higher levels of gameplay, his reload speed just simply does not allow him to do anything. He does not have enough range to be considered a sniper, and none of his star powers really does too much, although he has good gadgets, but again, those are more utility gadgets rather than something that will actually benefit him a lot. And you can't really change too much because otherwise he could very potentially become extremely toxic. So, how do you solve this problem? Well, glad you asked, because simple, a rework. Because I feel like this brawler has so much potential and can be a lot of fun and not be map dependent to be useful, which it is another problem that he has. With all this being said, hope you enjoy, and let's start with the first and I would say one of the most important changes. His reload time will be reduced from 2.3 seconds to 2.1 seconds, and his unload speeds, or actually his unload time, will be reduced from 0.5 seconds to 0.45 seconds. Now, it is a pretty small change, but there is another problem that Meeple has with his unload speed, because while you are unloading ammo, technically you cannot reload another one, which is a problem. So if you shoot all 3 ammos, it's like it will take you an extra 1.5 seconds to start reloading ammo. Not all brawlers have this. Obviously that's a good thing because a lot of brawlers could be broken with that, but I feel like that big problem mixed with his insanely long reload time, it is just ridiculous. Now, just kinda explaining my vision in a certain way for this brawler, I want him to be like a newbie friendly sniper, in a certain way almost like Brock. Sorry, Brock mains, for that one. But I feel like his damage is just too much. Like, you should not have a guided attack deal that much damage. With that being said, and because I want him to become a sniper, there are 2 things that we gotta do. His damage, first off, needs to be reduced from 2600, which is far too much, to 2180. I know it might sound harsh, but because he is now meant to be played as a sniper, 2180 damage, it is actually pretty reasonable damage, not gonna lie. It's the same damage as Miko, for you to have an idea. And also, his range will be increased from 7.67 tiles to 8.67 tiles. Now, you might be saying, but that is not a range sniper. And you would be correct, but there is another extra. His guided range actually makes so that his range overall is increased. Thanks to Brawl fandom, I can safely say that Piper's homemade recipe gadget increases the range by 1.66 tiles. So, because his projectile is guided but seems slightly less effective, I'll assume that it can have an additional 1.33 tiles of range. And if you do the math, that actually gives 10 tiles of range. It will not be 100% easy to connect the shots against snipers, but it will be against most of the brawlers that have less range than you, which again, newbie friendly. I mean, in the end he is an epic brawler, somehow, so I guess it makes sense for him to be not complicated to play with. Now we're gonna talk about his star powers. I would talk about the gadgets, but honestly, both of them feel pretty great. So, his first star power would now also apply to allies, but instead of just being an additional 600 damage, it would be an additional 20% damage. Like, imagine if Meg could deal an additional 600 damage per projectile with that thing. It would be broken. But only 20%, I feel like that is really balanced, and I mean, he's also meant to be a controller and also kind of a support, and I feel like this change justifies all of that. And now let's talk about his second star power, which would now become baseline. I don't want him to become map dependent, and even worse, he is easily counterable by any brawler that can break walls. Like, I don't know, Brock just suddenly destroys the entire map. Now what? You're useless. Therefore, his second star power will now be baseline. So no matter what, you and all of your teammates will get a 20% reload speed buff while inside the super. It should not change too much, honestly, because, 20% reload speed buff, I've seen better reload speed buffs that literally did nothing. Like, there is a reason to why people always prefer Daryl first star power and Bull's second star power. Like, the reload speed, it's, I would say, one of the smallest buffs or temporary buffs that you can give a brawler. With that being said, now we need to fill a new second star power, which would just simply be called Impact. His super radius would be increased by 33%, so now instead of being 2 tiles of radius, it would be 2.66 tiles of radius, and the duration would be increased by 20%. These would again focus more on the part of being versatile. Like, you cannot just only be helpful in maps with walls. It's one of my few problems with these brawlers. So I feel like these star powers should mainly help you with that versatility check, let's call it that. And finally, because otherwise the video would already end, I want to give this brawler a mythic gear and a hypercharge, because mythic gears are forgotten and eventually every single brawler will receive a hypercharge on their release. So I cannot wait to see how Supercell will handle that. But for Meeple, his new mythic gear would just be called Toxicity, and his super would now deal 80 damage per second. This, for reference, it is the same damage as Lu's super. And again, this is about versatility mainly, nothing really that special. If you want your super to be like in the middle of a hot zone map, this mythic gear, it's like the perfect call for you. And finally, we have a new hypercharge. It would be called My Game, My Rules, very simple, and his damage would be increased by 25%, the speed by 25%, and the shield by 25%. He's a controller, this is just, I think, the average hypercharge bonus stats, and the special attribute would be that all of your supers throughout the duration of the hypercharge get infinite radius. This pretty much means that while your hypercharge is active, your super goes to the whole map. So all of your team can just attack through walls, and all of your team would reload 20% faster, including yourself. So I feel like this would be overall a pretty good hypercharge, especially combined with the mythic gear, but at the same time, if my math is mathing, it's 400 damage to everyone, that's not the most. The odds of dying to that, it's pretty much the same as dying to a Rosa gadget. And just to make it clear, the super affecting the whole map, it's only during the hypercharge. So this effect only lasts 5 seconds. Do not misunderstood me. With all of this being said, what are your thoughts on Meeple, on this rework? Thank you for listening, write your opinion down in the comments. Trust me, I will read them. And I'll see ya on the next video.